Yo, what's up, gamers? Tonight we're diving into something a little different. We're talking about love in Runeterra, which is basically what happens when Riot's writers decided that regular relationships weren't tragic enough and needed to add war, death, forbidden politics, and existential suffering. I'm not talking about your average "we met at Baron Pit" love story. I'm talking about couples so devoted they'd literally 1v5 the entire world for each other. Relationships so doomed they make your hard-stuck ranked climb look optimistic. And romances so forbidden they're basically the Runeterra equivalent of dating someone who mains Yumi. So real quick, smash that like button if you're here for the emotional damage, subscribe if you want more unhinged lore content, and drop a comment telling me which league couple you think is the most ride or die. Bonus points if you can explain it without crying. We're all degenerates here, it's fine. Now turn off those lights, silence your phone because we both know you're about to pass out halfway through. Maybe grab some water and get comfy in your bed. Let's think about this for a second. Have you ever wondered what it's like to fall in love when your entire world is actively trying to kill you? What kind of mental fortitude does it take to maintain a relationship when one of you is literally trapped in a lantern or your nations have been at war for centuries? Could you survive loving someone if it meant betraying everything you were raised to believe? Is it worse than losing your diamond promos because your duo disconnected? How does someone go from "we have to get married for political reasons" to "I would actually run it down mid for you"? Alright, congratulations, you've just spawned into Runeterra. The year is irrelevant because suffering is timeless here. You have no relationship experience that prepares you for this, no guide on how to maintain love during apocalyptic events, and your mental is about to be tested harder than a Game 5 Baron throw. Welcome to love in the most unhinged fictional universe Riot ever created. Good luck, you're gonna need it. Alright, so let's talk about Xayah and Rakan, the couple that's basically what happens when you put two Fed carries on the same team, and they actually have perfect synergy instead of flaming each other in all chat. These two aren't your typical Disney romance where everything's sunshine and happily ever after, and true love's kiss solves all problems. They're revolutionaries, war criminals, depending on which side of the conflict you're asking. Battle partners who will literally dance circles around you while turning you into a death recap that you'll stare at wondering how you died so fast. And somehow, through all the bloodshed and revolution and fighting for their people's freedom, and probably committing several acts that would be considered terrorism by most legal standards, they're still the most ride-or-die duo in League lore. Like, we're talking about the kind of relationship where "till death do us part" actually means we're taking everyone else with us first, and we're going to look absolutely fabulous while doing it. They're that bot lane duo that's so in sync they don't even need pings. They just know. Every engage, every disengage, every team fight is choreographed like they share a brain cell, except the brain cell is dedicated entirely to looking gorgeous, ending lives efficiently, and occasionally bickering about tactics. When Rakan goes in with his grand entrance, Xayah's already got her feathers positioned perfectly for the follow-up. When Xayah's in danger and overextended, Rakan's already dashing to her rescue with Battle Dance. It's the kind of coordination that makes you wonder if they're scripting, or if they've just played together for so long that they've achieved bot lane enlightenment. They finish each other's sentences. They finish each other's kills. They're basically the poster children for relationship goals. If your relationship goals include overthrowing oppressive regimes, maybe committing a few acts of terrorism along the way, looking incredible while doing it, and having the kind of trust where you know your partner will always have your back, even when you make a questionable engage. You know, normal couple stuff. Their love isn't soft or gentle. It's sharp like her feathers, flashy like his performances, and absolutely deadly to anyone who threatens them or their people. They've weaponized their relationship, made it into something that makes them stronger together than they ever could be apart. When Xayah doubts herself, Rakan reminds her why they're fighting. When Raken gets too reckless, Zaya grounds him with reality. They balance each other perfectly, like a well-tuned composition that covers each other's weaknesses and amplifies each other's strengths. Now here's where it gets wholesome before it gets absolutely tragic and then revolutionary. And then we're all questioning how much suffering one species can endure. Picture this. You're in Ionia, the land of balance and harmony and spiritual enlightenment and all that Zen aesthetic that your 07 Yasuo definitely doesn't embody despite being from this region. This is before the Noxian invasion really ramped up, before everything went wrong, before the wars that would tear the continent apart and leave scars that would last generations. This is when Vastaya, the magical animal people, the beautiful chimeric beings that combine human and animal features, still had some semblance of peace. They weren't being hunted yet. Their forests weren't being burned. Their sacred places weren't being desecrated. Life was hard, sure, but it was livable. And Raken's just out here being the most charismatic bird boy you've ever seen in your entire life. He's performing in villages across Ionia, dancing for crowds, making everyone fall in love with him like he's got maxed out charm stats and dumped all his skill points into charisma, with nothing left for wisdom or intelligence. Imagine the most extroverted person you've ever met, the kind of person who walks into a room and immediately becomes the center of attention without even trying. Give them magical abilities and perfect iridescent feathers that catch the light, and you've got Raken. He's basically that support player who roams everywhere, spreads good vibes to every lane, somehow always survives fights with 12 HP because his movement is too clean, and makes everyone on his team feel like they're having the best game of their lives just by existing near them. Life is genuinely good for him. The world makes sense. His place in it feels secure. He's got his performances, his people love him, the crowds cheer his name, children watch him with wonder, adults find themselves smiling, and he hasn't met the woman who's about to completely rewire his entire world view and turn him from a peaceful performer into a rebel fighter willing to die for his cause. He's living in what we call the tutorial phase of life. Everything's easy, nothing truly bad has happened yet, the mechanics are simple, and he genuinely believes that charm and wit and entertainment can solve any problem. He truly thinks that by making people happy, by bringing joy and laughter to a troubled world, he's doing his part. He's making a difference, one performance at a time. He performs these elaborate shows with his magical feathers, creating illusions and displays of light that leave audiences absolutely mesmerized. He dances with a grace that seems impossible, defying physics, moving like water and wind combined. Little kids watch him with stars in their eyes, dreaming of being like him when they grow up. Adults find themselves smiling for the first time in weeks, their troubles forgotten for the duration of his performance. Raken brings joy wherever he goes, and he's genuinely happy doing it. Content. Fulfilled. He thinks this is his purpose in life, to make people happy, to spread light and laughter through a world that sometimes feels dark and overwhelming, to remind people that beauty and joy still exist. And honestly, it's working. He's beloved across multiple provinces, respected by his people. Other Vastaya look up to him as someone who's found their calling. He's living his best life as a traveling performer with not a care in the world beyond perfecting his next routine and finding his next audience. He probably thinks this is how his whole life will go. Traveling, performing, spreading joy, maybe eventually settling down somewhere peaceful. He has no idea that everything's about to change. No idea that his comfortable worldview is about to be completely shattered by a woman who'll show him that performing while their people suffer isn't noble. It's negligence. Meanwhile, Zaya's over here with a completely different energy, And by different, I mean she's already 3 steps into her villain origin story, except she's actually the hero if you understand the political situation. While Raken's out here charming crowds and making people smile and living his best entertainer life, Zaya's sharpening her feathers and plotting revolution like a jungler who's had enough of her team's end and decided to carry this absolute dumpster fire of a game herself through sheer force of will and aggression. She's seen what humans have done to Ionia. She's watched her people, the Vastaya, get exploited like resources, hunted like animals for sport or for their magical properties, pushed to the margins of their own homeland. She's seen Vastayan forests burned to make room for human settlements, sacred grounds desecrated because humans don't understand or don't care about their significance, ancient trees cut down, magical springs polluted, her people reduced to curiosities or targets or resources to be harvested. Some Vastaya are captured and sold, others are killed for trophies. Their habitats shrink every year as human expansion continues. And she's decided that peace talks and diplomatic solutions and trying to make humans understand through conversation are for people who haven't had their entire culture systematically destroyed while everyone just watches. This is a girl who woke up one day and chose violence, not the random, chaotic, emotional kind, but the calculated, strategic, I'm going to dismantle the entire system kind of violence that actually accomplishes things. She's got that mid-lane assassin energy where mercy isn't in the vocabulary and every move is calculated for maximum impact. Where Rakan sees crowds that might be charmed into caring about the Vastaya, Zaya sees oppressors who've proven they only understand force. Where Rakan performs and hopes to inspire change through beauty and art, Zaya strikes from the shadows, targeting those who've harmed her people directly, sending a message that the Vastaya aren't helpless victims waiting to be saved. She's already killed human hunters who were trapping Vastaya for profit, already sabotaged operations that were destroying Vastayan habitats, already freed, captured Vastaya from slavers. She's a one-woman resistance movement, and she's absolutely feral about it. Her dedication isn't born from hatred, it's born from love. Love for her people, love for her culture, love for the forests and sacred places that are disappearing. She fights because no one else will, because the alternative is watching everything she cares about slowly die. Her feathers aren't for show like Raken's. They're weapons, honed to lethal perfection through years of training and practical application. Every target she chooses is deliberate, selected for maximum strategic impact. Every strike is meant to inspire fear in those who would harm her people, and hope in the Vastaya who've forgotten how to fight back, who've accepted subjugation as inevitable. She's building something. A movement, a resistance. She knows she can't save her people alone, but she can inspire them. Show them that fighting back is possible, that they don't have to accept this slow erasure of their existence. Zaya is tired of watching her people disappear while everyone talks about peaceful solutions that never come. She's done waiting for change. She's creating it herself, one dead hunter at a time. One sabotaged operation at a time, one freed prisoner at a time. And if that makes her a terrorist in human eyes, so be it. She'd rather be feared and effective than peaceful and extinct. Okay, so this next part, absolutely cinema. Peak storytelling. Imagine you're Rakan, living your best life, performing for a crowd in some Ionian village that's probably never seen entertainment this good. You're doing your whole routine with the charm and the magical feathers and the dazzling displays that you've perfected over years. The crowd's eating it up like always. They're clapping, cheering, completely mesmerized by your performance. You're in your element, feeling good, riding that high that performers get when they know they've got the audience in the palm of their hand. You're thinking this is going to be another successful show. Another village of people whose day you've brightened, another confirmation that your life's purpose is valid and good. Then you see her, Zaya, standing in the very back of the crowd with her arms crossed, looking completely unimpressed by your whole routine, like she's watching her ADC miss every single CS under tower while she's doing all the work. She's not smiling. She's not charmed. She's not mesmerized by the lights or the dancing or anything you're doing. If anything, she looks vaguely annoyed that she's even here, like she's wasting time she could be spending on more important things. And for Raken, this is a complete crisis of identity. This beautiful, dangerous, absolutely stunning woman with these incredible, vibrant feathers doesn't care about his performance, his wit, his charm that's literally never failed before. Every person he's ever performed for has been moved in some way, has responded to his charisma, has acknowledged his talent, but not her. She's looking at him like he's performing parlor tricks while the world burns. It's like missing every skill shot in a 1v1 and realizing you might actually be the problem. Not your teammates, not the lag, not the hitboxes. You. For the first time in his life, Raken's charisma has hit a wall, and that wall is a 5-foot-something Vastayan revolutionary who looks like she could and would kill him if he said the wrong thing. She's gorgeous in a way that's almost intimidating, fierce, sharp, dangerous. Not the soft beauty he's used to inspiring with his performances, but something wilder, more primal, and he's immediately obsessed. So naturally, being Raken, being someone who's never had to work for anyone's attention or approval before, he becomes completely fixated on getting her to notice him, to acknowledge him, to react in literally any way. After the show ends and the crowd disperses, he finds her. She's already walking away, clearly having seen enough. He catches up, turns on his maximum charm, tries his usual lines. She rolls her eyes without even slowing down. He tries being funny, cracking jokes that usually get laughs. She's not amused. He tries being sincere, telling her how she captivated him more than any audience ever has. She stops walking, turns to look at him, and tells him his performance was a waste of time while their people are dying. Just like that. Blunt, direct, no softening the blow. She tells him he's dancing and performing while Vastaya are being hunted, captured, killed, while their forests are burning, while their culture is being erased, and he's entertaining humans who probably don't even see Vastaya as equals. Just like that, his entire worldview gets called into question. This isn't some girl playing hard to get. This is someone who genuinely doesn't value anything he's built his life around, and instead of getting defensive or walking away, Raken becomes more intrigued. Who is this woman? Why is she so angry? What does she know that he doesn't? What has she seen that he's been blind to? Now, here's where Raken's whole existence gets absolutely reworked like a champion getting gutted in a mid-season patch that changes their entire identity. Zaya doesn't just ignore his flirting or dismiss his performances as unimportant. She challenges everything he believes about the world and his place in it. She tells him about the war that's really happening, the one that exists outside the comfortable venues where he performs. The systematic destruction of Vastayan culture. The Vastaya being hunted not for food or survival, but for sport, for trophies, for the magical properties their bodies contain. She tells him about the forest being cleared, the sacred groves being desecrated, the magical places that sustained their people for generations being destroyed for human expansion. She tells him about Vastaya, who've been captured and sold into slavery, about children who've been orphaned, about entire communities that have been wiped out, and she asks him what his performances have done to stop any of it. What change has his art actually created? How many Vastaya has his entertainment saved? And suddenly, Raken's looking at his comfortable performer life like it's a bronze player watching their first Challenger VOD review and realizing they don't actually know how to play the game at all, that everything they thought they understood was wrong. He thought he was helping people by making them happy, by spreading joy and keeping spirits up during hard times. He genuinely believed his art mattered, that bringing beauty into the world was valuable. Zaya tells him that's not enough, that while he's been dancing and making crowds smile, their people have been dying, that his performances are beautiful distractions while the real fight is happening in the shadows, while people like her are actually doing something about the problem. She's not trying to be cruel. She's just honest, blunt. She's seen too much to care about sparing feelings. It's the equivalent of finally checking the mini-map after 20 minutes of laning phase and realizing your entire jungle has been invaded. 3 towers are down. The enemy has 2 drakes and Baron, and you had absolutely no idea any of it was happening because you were too focused on your own CS and trading pattern. The realization hits Raken like a truck loaded with existential dread. He's been willfully ignorant, complacent. He's been so focused on his art, on his performances, on making individuals smile for a few hours, that he missed the bigger picture, that he ignored the systematic oppression happening to his own people. He's been performing in human villages, entertaining the very people who've been complicit in Vastayan's suffering, either through direct action or through silent acceptance. And what has it accomplished? Some smiles, some applause, some fleeting joy that evaporates the moment his performance ends. Meanwhile, Vastaya continue to suffer, continue to lose ground, continue to face extinction while he dances. Zaya doesn't ask him to join her cause. She just shows him the truth, and Rakan has to decide what kind of person he wants to be. Does he go back to his performances, pretending everything's fine, maintaining the comfortable lie that his art is enough? Or does he step up and actually fight for his people, actually do something meaningful even if it means giving up the life he's known? The choice isn't really a choice at all. Once you see the truth, once you understand the real scope of what's happening, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to ignorance. You can't pretend it's not your problem. And from that moment on, Rakan makes his decision. He's going to fight. He's going to use his abilities not to entertain, but to protect. And he's going to do it alongside this absolutely terrifying woman who just completely changed his life in the span of a single conversation. From that day forward, Zaya and Raken become inseparable, and I mean that in the most chaotic, beautiful, deadly way possible that would make relationship counselors both impressed and concerned. They're not just partners, they're a unit, a single entity operating in perfect synchronization. Where Zaya is pragmatic and focused on the mission and the bigger picture, Rakan brings adaptability and improvisation and the ability to think on his feet. Where Rakan might hesitate before killing someone, bothered by the moral implications, Zaya pushes forward without doubt because she's already made peace with what needs to be done. They complement each other so perfectly, it's almost unfair to their enemies. In battle, they're synchronized like a perfectly executed bot lane combo that's been practiced for thousands of games. Rakan dashes in with his grand entrance, using his charm and crowd control to disable multiple enemies at once, creating openings. Zaya follows up immediately with a storm of feathers that shreds through anyone caught in her range, her blade collar feathers tearing through flesh and armor alike. He shields her when she overextends, using Battle Dance to reach her instantly and give her the protection she needs. She covers him when he goes too deep, recalling her feathers to slice through anyone trying to follow up on him. It's the kind of teamwork that makes you realize they're not just fighting together. They're fighting as one organism with 2 bodies. Every mission they undertake against those who harm the Vastaya is executed with precision and an almost artistic flair that Rakan can't help but bring even to combat. They've become legends among their people, the Charmer and the Rebel, the duo that actually fights back. That proves resistance is possible. Young Vastaya whisper their names with hope. Human oppressors whisper their names with fear. They've inspired others to join the cause, to stop accepting subjugation, to fight for their right to exist. But beyond the combat effectiveness, beyond the revolutionary impact, beyond the tactical advantages of their partnership, what makes their relationship so powerful is the genuine love underneath all of it. Raycon looks at Zaya and sees someone worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth building a better world for. He sees the woman who opened his eyes, who gave his life real purpose beyond entertainment, who showed him what it means to truly care about something bigger than yourself. Zaya looks at Rakan and sees someone who chose to stand with her when he could have stayed comfortable, someone who gave up everything, his fame, his safety, his peaceful life, to fight at her side. She sees someone who proves that people can change, that ignorance isn't permanent, that compassion and strength can coexist. They bicker constantly, sure. Zaya thinks Raken's too flashy, too reckless, too optimistic about people's capacity for good. She gets frustrated when he tries to charm their way out of situations she thinks require violence. Raycon thinks Zaya's too serious, too aggressive, too unwilling to see the good in people or consider non-violent solutions. He gets frustrated when she immediately jumps to killing, when maybe diplomacy could work. But underneath all that bickering, underneath all the disagreements about tactics and philosophy, is an unshakable foundation of trust and devotion. They'd both die for each other without hesitation, and they've both come close more times than they can count. When Rakan took a blade meant for Zaya during a mission, nearly died from the wound, she didn't leave his side for days. When Zaya was captured by human hunters and held for execution, Rakan went full berserker mode and cut through an entire camp to reach her. Their love isn't soft or safe. It's forged in battle, tempered by shared trauma, strengthened by fighting side by side for a cause bigger than both of them. It's the kind of love that exists in extremes, that burns bright and fierce, that would literally destroy the world before letting the other person come to harm. Zaya and Raken's relationship has this interesting dynamic where they're both equally committed to the cause, but express it in completely different ways, and somehow that makes them more effective rather than causing constant conflict. When they're planning a mission, Zaya is all tactical precision. She's mapping out patrol routes, identifying targets, planning escape routes, calculating risks. She's the strategist, the one who thinks 3 steps ahead and always has a backup plan. Raycon is pure improvisation. He listens to the plan, nods along, and then immediately goes off script the moment things start happening, because he sees an opportunity Zaya didn't account for. Or he gets a read on someone's emotional state that changes the optimal approach. This should drive Zaya crazy. In the early days of their partnership, it did drive her crazy. She'd make these careful plans, and Raycon would just ignore them, do something completely unexpected, and she'd have to adapt on the fly. But over time, she's learned that his improvisation actually works, that his ability to read a situation and react instinctively is just as valuable as her planning, that sometimes you can't account for every variable and you need someone who can think on their feet. And Raken's learned that having a plan as a foundation makes his improvisation more effective, that when he inevitably does something unexpected, it works better if Zaya's already set up the structure for it. They've developed this weird synergy where Zaya creates the framework and Raycon fills in the details through inspired chaos, and the combination is devastatingly effective. Their enemies can't predict what they're going to do, because half the time, they don't fully know themselves until Raycon makes some split-second decision that somehow works perfectly. It's like watching the most beautiful disaster unfold, except it's not actually a disaster, it's a calculated use of controlled chaos as a tactical weapon. And they've learned to fight together in ways that are almost artistic, Like, their combat isn't just effective, it's beautiful to watch if you're not on the receiving end of it. Raken will dash through enemies, not even looking behind him, completely confident that Zaya has already positioned her feathers exactly where they need to be. Zaya will throw herself into impossible situations, completely trusting that Raken will shield her or charm their enemies or create the opening she needs at exactly the right moment. They've fought together so much that they can basically close their eyes and still know where the other person is. It's that level of synchronization that comes from absolute trust and hundreds of battles together. When they fight, they're not two people working together. They're one organism with two bodies operating in perfect concert. And that level of coordination makes them way more dangerous than they would be individually. You can't just focus on one of them because the other one will destroy you. You can't split your attention because they're coordinated enough to exploit any momentary lapse. Fighting Zaya and Rakan together is basically fighting someone with four arms who can be in two places at once and also happens to be devastatingly attractive while killing you. But beyond the combat effectiveness and the revolutionary work, what makes their relationship really special is how they support each other emotionally through this extremely stressful life they've chosen. Because being revolutionaries is traumatic. They see horrible things. They've watched other Vastaya die despite their best efforts. They've killed people, not just in battle, but in cold blood when necessary for their mission. They carry the weight of every Vastaya who's counting on them, every person they couldn't save, every time they have to make impossible choices. And they process that trauma together in ways that are healthy, and ways that maybe aren't so healthy, but at least they're doing it together. After particularly bad missions, they let each other break down. Rakan has cried in Zaya's arms more than once about the things he's seen, about the person he's had to become. Zaya has had moments of doubt where she wonders if what they're doing even matters, if they're really making a difference or just getting people killed, and Rakan talks her through it. They give each other permission to be vulnerable, which is rare in their world where showing weakness can get you killed. They know each other's fears. Rakan's terrified that one day Zaya will be killed because he wasn't fast enough to protect her. Zaya's terrified that Rakan will die because she got him into this life, that he'll sacrifice himself for her or the cause. They both live with constant fear for each other's safety, but they've learned to function despite that fear. They've accepted that this life is dangerous, that they might lose each other at any moment, and they've decided they'd rather risk that than not be together. It's not a healthy mindset according to any normal standard, but they're not living a normal life. They're living in the middle of a conflict where every day could be their last, and they've made peace with that reality. So they love each other fiercely while they can, knowing that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And honestly, the fact that their relationship survives the stress of revolutionary warfare says something about how strong it is. Most relationships crack under way less pressure. They're dealing with constant danger, moral ambiguity, trauma, loss, and the weight of an entire people's hopes. And they're still together, still solid, still finding moments to laugh and be playful even in the darkness. Rakan still makes Zaya smile with his ridiculous charm, even when she's in her most serious strategic mode. Zaya still surprises Rakan with moments of vulnerability and softness that remind him why he fights. They're balancing each other. When one of them is slipping toward darkness or despair, the other pulls them back. When one of them is wounded physically or emotionally, the other carries them until they can walk again. It's partnership at its finest. Two people who make each other better, who cover each other's weaknesses, who amplify each other's strengths, who've built something together that's greater than what either could achieve alone. They're not just fighting for the Vastaya anymore. They're fighting for each other, for the future they want to build together, for the right to love each other without hiding, for a world where what they have can exist openly and safely. The tragedy, of course, is that they don't know if they'll ever see that world. The war against Vastayan oppression isn't going well on a macro level. They're winning tactical victories, inspiring resistance, making the oppressors pay a price. But systemically, things are still getting worse. More Vastaya die every year, more habitat is destroyed, more of their culture is lost. Zaya and Rakan are buying time, keeping hope alive, proving resistance is possible. But they're not actually winning the war. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And they both know it, even if they don't say it. They know they're probably fighting a losing battle, that they'll likely die in this conflict, that the world they want might not come about in their lifetime. But they fight anyway because what else can they do? Give up and watch their people disappear? Accept oppression as inevitable? That's not who they are. So they keep fighting, keep loving each other, keep holding on to hope even when it seems impossible. And maybe that's enough. Maybe love and resistance in the face of impossible odds is its own victory, regardless of the outcome. Maybe the fact that they tried, that they stood up, that they refused to go quietly, means something, even if they don't live to see the world change. At least they'll have done it together. Let me tell you about the most griefing premise for a relationship in League lore, that somehow, against all odds, against all reasonable expectations, actually worked. Arranged marriage for political alliance. Like, imagine queuing up for ranked, getting auto-filled to a role you hate, matched with someone completely random in Champ Select, whose op.gig you check and you have completely different playstyles, and instead of dodging and taking the LP loss, you're legally required to duo with them for the rest of your life with no option to unfriend or block. That's Ashe and Tryndamere. Two people who had never met before their wedding day. Two leaders of tribes that had historically been rivals, or at least very different in culture and values. Two individuals who had their own plans for their lives that didn't include marriage to a stranger. Except plot twists that nobody saw coming. Twist that makes this story weirdly wholesome. These two actually made it work. They went from we have to do this for our people and our tribes and the future of the Freljord, and we're just going to tolerate each other to when, no actually, I'd run it down mid for you. I love you more than my next pentakill. I'd fight every other tribe in the Freljord if it meant keeping you safe. It's like when you get auto-filled support, pick Thresh because you might as well try to make it work, and somehow end up having the best synergy with your random ADC you've ever experienced in your entire League career. You land every hook, they follow up on every engage, you're saving them from ganks, they're positioning perfectly in team fights. Sometimes the matchmaking system just works. Sometimes two people who should have nothing in common find common ground in unexpected ways. Sometimes political necessity turns into genuine affection and respect. But this isn't just a cute story about an arranged marriage working out. This is a story about two extremely different people from two extremely different cultures learning to respect each other, trust each other, and eventually love each other while simultaneously trying to unite the most hostile, divided, actively self-destructive region in all of Runeterra. The Freljord isn't just cold, it's brutal, it's unforgiving. It's a land where survival is a daily struggle against the environment, and tribes have been fighting each other for generations over resources, territory, and ancient grudges that nobody even remembers the origin of anymore. And into this frozen hellscape come Ashe and Tryndamere, two leaders who barely know each other, who come from completely different worlds, trying to build a bridge between their people while also figuring out how to be married to each other. It's political strategy meeting personal relationship, except both of them are under constant pressure from their tribes, from rival leaders who see any alliance as weakness, from the harsh environment itself that kills people regularly, and from their own uncertainties about whether this can possibly work. So here's the thing about Ash that makes her story so compelling and tragic. She never wanted to be queen. She didn't wake up as a little girl dreaming about leading armies and uniting warring tribes and carrying the entire Freljord's future on her shoulders until she dies. She wanted peace, maybe a quiet life, maybe to just exist without the crushing weight of an entire civilization's survival riding on her every decision. But she was born into the Avarosan tribe as nobility, blessed or cursed with the blood of ancient heroes in her veins. And when her mother Grina died, killed in battle defending their people, someone had to step up. Someone had to lead. The tribe couldn't afford weakness or uncertainty. And Ash, who was basically still a kid trying to figure out her own life, who was grieving her mother, who wasn't ready for any of this, had to become the Frost Archer. Had to pick up Avarosa's legendary bow, a weapon so powerful that it chooses its wielder. Had to become a symbol, a leader, a unifier. It's the Runeterra equivalent of being the only person in your Discord server with a functioning brain and basic game knowledge. So now you're the de facto shot caller, even though you just wanted to play ARAM and vibe with your friends. Except instead of shot calling in League, you're shot calling for actual human lives in a frozen wasteland, where one wrong decision means people die from starvation, freezing, raids from other tribes, or any number of other horrible ways. Ash didn't ask for the weight of expectation, but she carries it anyway because someone has to, and she's the only one who can wield Avarosa's bow. She believes in a vision of the Freljord where tribes don't have to fight each other to survive, where people can unite under common cause instead of killing each other over scraps of territory, where the region's collective strength could be directed towards surviving the environment and building something better instead of destroying each other. It's an idealistic vision. Some would say naive, some would say impossible, but Ash genuinely believes in it with every fiber of her being. She's seen too much senseless death, too much suffering that could be avoided if people would just talk instead of immediately resorting to violence. She's watched children starve because their tribe spent all their resources on war. She's seen families torn apart by cycles of vengeance that go back generations, so she becomes a leader, not through aggression or conquest like most Freljordian leaders, but through diplomacy and inspiration. She wields Avarosa's bow, a legendary weapon that marks her as the heir to an ancient lineage of leaders who once united the Freljord. She makes alliances with other tribes through negotiation. She seeks peaceful solutions before violent ones. She tries to be the leader her people need, even when every day feels like it's slowly killing her inside, even when the pressure makes her want to just run away and let someone else figure it out. Now let's talk about Tryndamere, a man whose entire champion design is literally too angry to die, and whose lore backs that up in the most traumatic way possible that explains why he became this way. This guy watched his entire tribe get slaughtered, his whole world destroyed in a single day. We're not talking about losing a ranked game or having a bad day or experiencing normal hardship. We're talking about watching everyone you've ever known, everyone you've ever loved, every familiar face from your childhood get brutally executed in front of you while you're powerless to stop it. He was just a barbarian warrior in his tribe, probably thinking about normal barbarian things like raiding, fighting, proving his strength, surviving the harsh Freljord winter. His tribe wasn't the strongest, but they were his family, his home. Then raiders came. Maybe they were sent by rival tribes. Maybe they were just opportunistic bandits. Maybe they were something worse. The details matter less than the result. Tryndamere fought like a demon possessed, killed dozens of them, took wounds that should have been fatal multiple times over, and it still wasn't enough. His tribe fell around him. His people died screaming. He was about to die too, bleeding out in the snow from countless injuries, probably welcoming death at that point, because what else was there? What reason did he have to keep living when everyone he loved was gone? But then something happened, something dark, something wrong, something that shouldn't be possible, a power, maybe from the darkness itself, maybe from some ancient entity, maybe from his own rage refusing to let him die, surged through him. His wounds didn't matter anymore. His injuries became fuel instead of hindrance. Death itself became a suggestion he could ignore through sheer fury and what can only be described as spite against the universe. From that day forward, Tryndamere became rage incarnated. Pure, unfiltered turret diving at full HP because I'm too angry to care about consequences aggression given human form. He became a barbarian king, leading the remnants of various broken tribes, building a new people through strength and conquest. He doesn't have Ash's idealism. He doesn't believe in peaceful unity or diplomatic solutions. He believes in survival through power, in protecting his people through sheer overwhelming force that makes attacking them too costly to contemplate. He's seen what happens when you're weak, when you're not strong enough to defend what's yours, and he's decided that will never happen again. He'll become strong enough to protect everyone under his banner, or he'll die trying. And given his particular ability to refuse death through anger, dying isn't really on the table. He's basically running on trauma, fury, and whatever dark power keeps him alive when he should be dead 100 times over. Alright, so imagine you're Ash. You're trying to unite the Freljord through diplomacy, wisdom, strategic alliances, and carefully negotiated peace treaties that require months of discussion. You're playing the political long game like a macro-focused top laner who understands wave management, back timings, and map pressure. You're building something sustainable, something that will last beyond your lifetime. Then your advisors come to you and tell you that you need to marry Tryndamere, this absolutely feral barbarian king who solves every problem by right-clicking harder and whose idea of diplomacy is deciding not to kill you immediately. On paper, this is a disaster waiting to happen. This is like being a luck support main who gets matched with a Draven one-trick who's never heard of the concept of playing safe or waiting for power spikes. The cultural differences alone should make this impossible. Ash's Avarosan tribe values wisdom, community, peaceful coexistence when possible. They have councils and discussions. They value everyone's input. Tryndamere's people value strength above all else, survival through martial prowess, proving yourself through combat. They have hierarchies based entirely on who can fight best. Ash leads through inspiration and strategy and showing people a better way. Tryndamere leads through raw power and intimidation and being unkillable. They speak different languages, metaphorically and sometimes literally. They have different worldviews, different approaches to literally every problem. The marriage is purely political, a union meant to combine their forces to create a stronger alliance that can protect both their people and potentially draw other tribes into the fold. Show the Freljord that unity is possible even between very different groups. Neither of them expects love. Neither of them is particularly thrilled about this arrangement. Ash knows she needs this alliance, needs Tryndamere's strength and his warriors to make her vision of a united Freljord possible. Tryndamere knows his people need stability and Ash's diplomatic connections and the legitimacy her bloodline brings. They're both doing their duty, making the sacrifice their people need. The wedding happens. It's probably awkward as hell. Two strangers bound together by political necessity, standing in front of their combined tribes, promising things neither of them is sure they can deliver. They're contractually obligated to be married, to present a united front, to make this work somehow. They're trying to figure out how to even talk to each other, how to exist in the same space, let alone rule together or develop actual feelings. Ash is probably thinking this barbarian is going to undermine all her diplomatic efforts. Tryndamere is probably thinking this idealistic girl doesn't understand how the Freljord really works, and they're both probably right, at least initially. But here's where it gets surprisingly wholesome and proves that sometimes arranged marriages can work if both people actually try instead of just going through the motions. At first, Ash and Tryndamere are just fulfilling their obligations, attending meetings together, presenting a united front to their people, sleeping in the same hall because that's what's expected of married leaders. They're polite, cordial, professional. They attend council meetings together, make joint decisions about resource allocation and defense, smile for their people. But there's no real connection beyond political necessity. They're strangers playing house, actors in a play that their tribes need them to perform convincingly. They probably barely talk beyond what's required for ruling. Ash focuses on her diplomatic efforts. Tryndamere focuses on training warriors and defending their territory. They exist in parallel, not together. Then, slowly, like ice melting in spring, something starts to shift. Maybe it happens during a long winter night when they're both awake, unable to sleep, and they actually start talking. Maybe it happens during a crisis that forces them to rely on each other. Maybe it's just gradual exposure and realizing the other person isn't as bad as initially assumed. They begin actually talking to each other beyond political necessities. Ash tells Tryndamere about her vision for the Freljord, about her hopes for peace and unity, about her dreams of a region where children don't starve and tribes don't slaughter each other. Tryndamere listens, and while he doesn't fully agree with her methods, doesn't fully believe in peaceful solutions, he respects her conviction. Respects that she genuinely believes in something and is willing to work toward it. Tryndamere tells Ash about what happened to his tribe, about the slaughter he survived, about the darkness that saved him, about the rage that keeps him alive when he should be dead. Ash listens, and she begins to understand that beneath all that fury is a man who's lost everything and refuses to lose anything else. That his aggression isn't mindless, it's protective. He fights so hard because he cannot bear the thought of failing to protect people again. They start seeing each other as actual people rather than political pieces or tribal representatives. Ash realizes that Tryndamere's aggression comes from a place of protection and trauma. He fights so viciously because he's seen what happens when you're not strong enough, and he'll die before letting his people experience what his original tribe did. Tryndamere realizes that Ash's diplomacy isn't weakness or naivete. It's a different kind of strength, one that builds alliances and creates something lasting rather than just responding to immediate threats with violence. He starts to see the value in her approach, even if he still thinks his way is necessary too. They begin to complement each other in ways neither expected. In battles against rival tribes or monsters, Ash provides the strategy and long-range precision, while Tryndamere provides the raw combat power and frontline presence. In negotiations with other tribes, Ash offers the diplomatic words and compromises, while Tryndamere provides the implicit threat of overwhelming force that makes people take the negotiations seriously. They become an actual team. And somewhere along the way, duty becomes respect, respect becomes trust, trust becomes friendship, and friendship becomes something deeper that neither of them quite knows how to name. It's like finally understanding your duo's play style after 50 games together, except instead of League, it's ruling a frozen wasteland full of hostile tribes and deadly wildlife and ancient curses. They start protecting each other, not because the alliance requires it, not because their tribes expect it, but because they genuinely care about each other's well-being. When Ash is in danger during a raid on their settlement, Tryndamere fights with even more fury than usual, cutting through enemies to reach her, positioning himself between her and threats with an almost desperate intensity. When Tryndamere's rage threatens to consume him, when the darkness that powers him starts pulling him towards something monstrous, Ash is there to ground him, to remind him of what they're fighting for beyond just revenge and survival, to pull him back from the edge with her presence and her words. The political marriage becomes real. They're not just king and queen playing roles, they're partners who've chosen each other even though the choice was initially made for them. They disagree on strategy sometimes. They argue about how to handle certain tribes or situations, whether to use force or diplomacy. But they work through it because they respect each other's perspective and have learned to value what each brings to the table. And gradually, the tribes notice. The Avarosan and the barbarian tribes see their leaders actually functioning as a unit, see them defending each other, see them making decisions together with genuine respect. They see Ash and Tryndamere standing together on the walls during attacks, fighting side by side, each making the other stronger. And it inspires others to join their cause, to believe that maybe this unity thing could actually work. The alliance grows stronger, not just because of political convenience, but because people see that maybe, just maybe, unity is actually possible. Maybe ice and rage can coexist productively. Maybe wisdom and strength aren't mutually exclusive, but actually complement each other. Ash and Tryndamere become living proof that the Freljord doesn't have to tear itself apart, that old enemies can become new allies, that love can grow even in the coldest, harshest environment imaginable, where survival itself is a daily struggle. They show that two people from completely different worlds can find common ground and build something beautiful together. Now let's talk about how Ash and Tryndamere handle conflict. Because, spoiler alert, they're not always on the same page, and sometimes their arguments could probably be heard across half the Freljord. They disagree fundamentally about a lot of things. When a smaller tribe asks to join their alliance, Ash wants to welcome them with open arms, see it as progress toward unity. Tryndamere wants to test them first, make sure they're actually strong enough to contribute, make sure they're not going to be a liability. When they face threats from rival tribes, Ash's first instinct is negotiation and offering terms. Tryndamere's first instinct is overwhelming force and making an example. When they're planning resource distribution, Ash wants to make sure everyone gets enough to survive. Tryndamere wants to ensure the warriors are well supplied first because without strong defenders, everyone dies anyway. These aren't small disagreements. These are fundamental differences in philosophy and approach that could tear apart a weaker relationship. But here's what makes them work despite the differences. They've learned to actually listen to each other. Not just wait for their turn to talk, but genuinely consider the other person's perspective. Ash has learned that sometimes Tryndamere's aggressive approach is necessary, that the Freljord is brutal enough that pure idealism will get you killed. She's learned to trust his instincts about threats and combat because he's been surviving through warfare his entire life. Tryndamere has learned that Ash's diplomatic approach actually works more often than he initially believed, that building genuine alliances is more sustainable than ruling through fear, that her way creates loyalty instead of just compliance. He's learned that her compassion isn't weakness, it's strategic intelligence about building something lasting. So when they disagree now, they argue it out privately. Loudly sometimes, because they're both passionate people who care deeply about their people's survival. But they argue in good faith, actually trying to understand each other's position rather than just win the argument. And they compromise. Not in the weak, wishy-washy way, where nobody gets what they want, but in the way where they combine their approaches into something stronger. A tribe wants to join? They welcome them like Ashe wants, but also test their warriors like Tryndamere insists, and it becomes a tradition that actually strengthens their alliance by ensuring every member tribe is capable while also feeling welcomed. They face a threat. They try Ashe's negotiation first, but with Tryndamere and his warriors visibly present as the implicit alternative. And it turns out negotiations work better when everyone knows you could crush them but are choosing not to. They're building a leadership style that's uniquely theirs, combining Avaros and wisdom with barbarian strength in ways that neither culture could achieve alone. Other Freljordian tribes are noticing. Some are confused by it, some are intrigued. Some are threatened by it because a united Freljord would upset a lot of established power structures, but it's working, slowly but surely. More tribes are joining their alliance. The lands they control are more stable, better defended, more prosperous than they were when they ruled separately. Their personal relationship has become the model for their political alliance, and vice versa. Just like they learn to respect each other's differences and find strength in combining their approaches, their alliance teaches their tribes that unity doesn't mean erasing what makes you unique. It means contributing your strengths to something bigger. Ashe and Tryndamere are living proof that ice and rage can not only coexist, but make each other better. That wisdom and strength aren't opposing forces, but complementary ones. And on a personal level, they've moved beyond that initial stage of learning to like each other into something deeper. Ashe finds herself genuinely excited to see Tryndamere after he returns from a patrol, genuinely missing him when he's gone. Tryndamere finds himself seeking Ashe's counsel, even on matters where he used to just make unilateral decisions, valuing her input, wanting her approval. They've started to feel like a real partnership in every sense. Political, military, and personal. There are moments now where Ashe watches Tryndamere training with his warriors, sees the respect and loyalty he inspires, sees the way he's dedicated to protecting everyone under his banner. And she thinks about how lucky she is that the political marriage brought her to him specifically. There are moments where Tryndamere watches Ashe negotiating with another tribe's leader, sees her patience and wisdom and genuine care for all the Freljord's people, sees her bearing the weight of leadership with grace, and he thinks about how she's made him a better leader and maybe a better person. The arranged marriage that neither of them wanted has become something they both cherish. They've fallen in love slowly, gradually, through shared experience and mutual respect. It's not the passionate, dramatic love story that makes for exciting tales around the fire. It's steadier than that, more solid, built on a foundation of partnership and trust that makes it sustainable for the long term. They're in this together for life now, not because they have to be, but because they've chosen to be, and that makes all the difference. And they've started actually talking about a future beyond just surviving the next winter or defeating the next threat, talking about what the Freljord could become if they succeed in uniting it, about their legacy, about maybe eventually having children who could inherit the alliance they're building and continue their work, about growing old together, which in the Freljord is a significant accomplishment given how many ways there are to die young. These are conversations they never would have had in the early days of their marriage when they could barely stand to be in the same room. Now they're planning decades ahead together, building something that will outlast both of them, and finding comfort in knowing they don't have to face the brutal reality of the Freljord alone. They have a true partner who understands the burden of leadership and shares it with them. The arranged marriage worked because they both put in the effort to make it work, because they both valued their duty enough to try, and because underneath the cultural differences and initial skepticism, they were actually compatible in ways that mattered. Sometimes the universe gets the matchmaking right, even when nobody asked it to. Okay, so this next part, absolutely unhinged, completely devastating. We're about to talk about Lucian and Senna, and I need you to understand before we even start that this isn't a cute romance where they meet at a coffee shop, fall in love over shared interests, and live happily ever after with a white picket fence. This is a tragedy that got weaponized into the most dedicated, most devoted, most ride-or-die ADC support duo in League history. We're talking about a love so powerful, so unbreakable, so absolutely insane that one of them literally spent years trapped in supernatural torment, and the other became so consumed by grief and vengeance that he turned into a two-gun-wielding angel of death who makes the Punisher look reasonable and well-adjusted. It's the kind of story that makes your worst-ranked loss, your most painful promos, your most devastating demotion look like a minor inconvenience you'll forget about tomorrow. This is what happens when Riot's narrative team decides that a happy couple isn't dramatic enough for their story, and they need to add literal soul-stealing demons and years of torment and suffering and a rescue mission through the most dangerous location in Runeterra. Lucian and Senna's story is beautiful and romantic, and also so horrifically tragic that you'll want to give them both several years of therapy and a long vacation, somewhere peaceful where nothing tries to kill them. They're the couple that said death? Yeah, no. We're going to make that everyone else's problem instead. They didn't accept separation when most people would have eventually moved on. They didn't let go when any reasonable person would have started the grieving process. They fought reality itself, fought the natural order, fought literal death and the afterlife to be together again. And somehow, impossibly, they succeeded. But the cost was years of suffering and trauma that transformed them both into something different from what they were. Let me paint you a picture of what Lucian and Senna's life was like before everything went catastrophically wrong, and their existence became eternal suffering, punctuated by brief moments of ghost-killing satisfaction. They're sentinels of light, basically the Runeterra equivalent of ghost hunters, except the ghosts are actually terrifying wraiths and specters that will absolutely ruin your existence rather than just making spooky noises. And instead of EMF readers and spirit boxes, they have magical weapons powered by ancient relics that can actually destroy undead horrors. This is their job, their calling, their purpose. They travel across Runeterra, fighting the undead monstrosities that leak from the Shadow Isles, that cursed place where death itself got corrupted during a cataclysmic magical disaster, and everything went wrong in the worst way possible. They protect villages that don't even know how close they are to complete annihilation. They hunt specters and wraiths and all manner of supernatural threats that would drive normal people insane just from witnessing them. And through all of this danger, all this constant proximity to death and horror, all these near-death experiences and close calls, they're not just partners in the professional sense, they're soulmates in the most literal way. Every fight, they've got each other's backs without question. Every close call, they survive together through teamwork and trust. They've perfected their combat synergy to an art form through years of fighting side by side. Lucian draws the aggro, kites the threats, keeps enemies focused on him with his mobility and his aggressive positioning. Senna provides support from range, shields him when he overextends, heals him when he takes damage, strikes from distance with her massive relic cannon that fires beams of pure light. They're that bot lane duo in Ranked, where you don't even need to ping, because they just know what the other is thinking. One glance across the battlefield and they understand the play. One gesture, and they're already moving in sync to execute it. They've fought together for so long that they can predict each other's movements, cover each other's weaknesses, amplify each other's strengths. Beyond the combat synergy, beyond the professional partnership, they're genuinely in love in a way that's almost disgusting to witness because it's so pure. They laugh together between missions, finding joy even in their dangerous life. They hold each other after particularly brutal fights where they almost lost each other. They talk about maybe someday retiring from this life and just being normal people. Having a home, having a family, growing old together in peace. It's a beautiful dream, and they're both naive enough, optimistic enough, to think it might actually happen someday when they've made the world safe enough. Now here's where Riot's writer said, "Let's take everything good and pure in the world and destroy it systematically because we feed on player tears and suffering." During one of their missions, hunting undead in a region where the Shadow Isle's influence is spreading, they encounter Thresh. And if you don't know who Thresh is, imagine the worst, most toxic support player you've ever faced, except he's actually an immortal sadistic demon who literally collects souls like other people collect champion skins or prestige points. Thresh isn't just evil in the standard villain way, he's creatively evil. Artistically cruel. He doesn't just kill people because that would be too simple, too quick, too merciful. He torments them, traps their souls, makes them suffer for eternity, while he feeds on their anguish like it's sustenance. He's been doing this for potentially centuries, collecting souls in his lantern, an artifact of immense dark power. And during this encounter with Lucian and Senna, while they're fighting wraiths and trying to purge an area of undead corruption, Thresh sees something that interests him more than any soul. He's collected in recent memory. He sees Senna, sees her light, the brightness of her soul that shines like a beacon, her strength, her willpower, her pure heart. Her soul burns brighter than most humans, probably because of her work as a sentinel, her exposure to light magic, her strong spirit, and he wants it. Not to destroy. That would be too simple, too wasteful. He wants to trap it, to add it to his collection, to torture it for all eternity and feed on her suffering for as long as existence continues. What happens next is the most grieving moment in Lucian's entire existence, the kind of traumatic event that would break most people permanently and leave them non-functional. In the middle of combat, while they're both engaged with other threats, Thresh makes his move. He throws his chain with supernatural accuracy, lands his hook, that same death sentence hook that's tilted you off the face of the earth in 1,000 ranked games. Except instead of just grabbing Senna's body and pulling her into danger, his chain latches onto something deeper, her soul. And right in front of Lucian, right as he's turning toward her, right as he's reaching out to help her, Thresh rips Senna's soul out of her body and drags it screaming into his lantern. Imagine watching your duo partner not just die, but having their very essence trapped in eternal torment while you're powerless to stop it from happening. Imagine getting your soulmate, your partner, your reason for living, permanently removed from existence while you're in the middle of trying to save them, and you're just 3 seconds too far away to prevent it. Except it's worse than any death because Lucian knows she's still in there, still conscious, still suffering. Her body falls lifeless to the ground, empty, a shell without the soul that animated it. But her soul, the part that makes Senna who she is, her consciousness, her memories, her personality, is now Thresh's prisoner, trapped in that cursed lantern, surrounded by hundreds of other tortured souls, experiencing torment that would shatter most minds within hours. After losing Senna, after watching her soul get ripped away, Lucian doesn't quit. He doesn't move on. He doesn't try to accept what happened and eventually heal. He doesn't find healthy coping mechanisms or seek support from other sentinels or try to process his grief in any normal way. Instead, he becomes the most obsessed man in Runeterra, dedicating every single waking moment to one singular goal: killing every single undead monster he encounters until he can somehow, some way, get Senna back. His grief transforms into fury. His sadness becomes rage. His love becomes a weapon more powerful than any relic gun. He takes Senna's massive cannon, the weapon she used to wield, her signature relic gun, and modifies his arsenal so he's dual-wielding these enormous guns, one representing each of them, carrying her weapon as a promise that he'll get her back. He's running through the Shadow Isles solo like a Fed ADC with no peel, no team, no backup, just pure mechanical skill, spite, and an absolute refusal to accept reality as permanent. Every demon he destroys with precision shots, every wraith he purges with holy light, every specter he banishes back to the abyss. He's thinking about her, thinking about how she's suffering, thinking about how he failed to protect her, thinking about how he's going to somehow make this right. He's hunting Thresh specifically, tracking the Chain Warden across Runeterra with obsessive dedication, studying his patterns, trying to catch him, trying to somehow break that lantern and free Senna and all the other souls trapped inside. It's the kind of dedication that's simultaneously beautiful and deeply concerning, the kind of single-minded focus that's obviously unhealthy but also kind of inspiring. Like a one trick with 3 million mastery points, who refuses to play anything else even when their champion gets nerfed into the ground across multiple patches. Lucian becomes a legend among the Sentinels, the man who hunts alone, who takes missions no one else will touch, who walks into the Shadow Isles without backup and somehow walks back out alive. They whisper about him, about how he never stops, how he never rests, how he's driven by something beyond normal duty. But inside, he's breaking, crumbling. Every night, he's tortured by the knowledge that Senna's still suffering, still trapped, still experiencing horrors he can't even imagine. Every day he pushes himself harder, fights more recklessly, takes more risks because his own survival doesn't matter anymore. He only cares about ending threats and finding Thresh and somehow saving her. Okay, so after literal years of Lucian going full protagonist mode through the most dangerous locations in Runeterra, fighting things that would make normal people quit and uninstall life, something absolutely insane and impossible happens. Senna breaks free. And here's the thing that makes Senna built different from literally every other soul that's been trapped in Thresh's lantern across centuries. She doesn't escape solely because Lucian finally managed to save her, though he definitely helped by constantly griefing Thresh's entire existence and weakening the lantern through sheer persistence and thousands of attacks over years. She escapes because she's Senna. And even death and eternal torment and being trapped in a supernatural prison couldn't keep her down or break her spirit. This woman spent years, literal years, trapped in Thresh's lantern, surrounded by hundreds of other tortured souls who've mostly gone insane, experiencing anguish and horror that would destroy most people's minds within hours. The lantern isn't just a prison, it's specifically designed for torment. The souls inside are conscious, aware, experiencing their worst fears and memories on repeat while Thresh feeds on their suffering. But instead of breaking, instead of giving up, instead of losing herself like almost every other soul in the lantern has, Senna did something thought impossible. She adapted, she learned, she studied the mist itself, the cursed energy that powers the Shadow Isles and flows through the lantern. She figured out how to wield it, how to channel it, how to use the very power that imprisoned her as a tool. She turned her prison into a training arc, like she was grinding levels in the absolute worst location imaginable. She communicated with other souls trapped in the lantern, helping them maintain their sanity, organizing them, giving them hope when hope should be impossible. She basically became a leader and support system in literal hell. And when the opportunity finally came, when Lucian's constant attacks on Thresh created just enough weakness in the lantern structure, just enough crack in its supernatural integrity, Senna let a prison break. She shattered the lantern from the inside, using the mist power she'd learned to manipulate, freed herself and many other souls who'd been trapped for who knows how long, and emerged into the world transformed into something new. She's not the same person she was before. She's infused with the mist now, her body caught between life and death, existing in a state that shouldn't be possible. She's wielding the very power that imprisoned her, channeling shadow magic alongside the light power she had as a sentinel. She's mastered death itself, learned to manipulate the boundary between life and the afterlife. She's basically come back from the most traumatic AFK in history with a full build, new abilities nobody's seen before, and a personal vendetta against everyone who uses the mist for evil. Now you'd think the story ends here with a happy reunion and everything going back to normal, and they retire to live peacefully, right? Wrong. This is League lore. Nothing ever just works out nicely. When Lucian and Senna finally reunite after years of separation, after Lucian spent every day searching for her and she spent every day surviving in torment, it's not like the movies where they run into each other's arms and kiss and everything's perfect and they live happily ever after. It's complicated. It's messy. It's two people who've both been fundamentally changed by trauma trying to figure out if they can still fit together, if the relationship they had can survive what they've become. Senna's different now in ways that go beyond just being traumatized. She's literally infused with the mist, this dark energy that marks her as something between living and dead. She can see souls now, perceive death in ways that are deeply unsettling. She's constantly aware of the supernatural, of the thin barrier between life and death, of spirits and wraiths that normal people can't perceive. She's powerful, maybe more powerful than she ever was as a normal sentinel, but that power comes with a cost. She's walking a knife's edge between being herself and becoming something else entirely, something monstrous. The mist inside her whispers to her, tries to pull her toward darkness. She has to constantly fight to maintain her humanity and identity. And Lucian's different too. Years of grief and violence have hardened him into someone who shoots first and doesn't bother with questions or mercy. He's become more ruthless, more focused, less patient. The man who used to laugh with her, who used to talk about peaceful futures and retirement and growing old together, has been replaced by someone who only knows how to fight and hunt and kill undead. His personality has been ground down by years of obsessive hunting, leaving only the core elements of vengeance and duty. They still love each other, that's undeniable. The moment they see each other again, all those feelings come flooding back with overwhelming force. But now they're both carrying trauma that would break normal people, and they're trying to figure out their relationship while also continuing to fight the Shadow Isles and hunt Thresh and deal with the fact that Senna's very existence is an affront to the natural order. Living people aren't supposed to wield mist powers. Souls aren't supposed to escape Thresh's lantern. She's a walking impossibility, and there are forces that want to correct that impossibility by killing her or capturing her again. It's like finally getting your duo partner back after they transferred to another server for years, but now you're both playing completely different roles with completely different builds, and you've developed completely different play styles, and you're trying to relearn your synergy from scratch, except with more existential dread, identity crises, and supernatural consequences that could literally destroy the world if something goes wrong. They work together again. They're still that incredible team with perfect mechanical synergy, but there's a distance now that wasn't there before, an understanding that they can never go back to who they were. Those people died the day Thresh took Senna's soul. They can only move forward as these new versions of themselves, different but still together, still fighting side by side, still loving each other through all the pain and change and uncertainty about what Senna's becoming. Their relationship becomes about accepting change while maintaining the core of what they had, about loving someone even when they're different from who you remember, about fighting together even when the odds are impossible, and the enemy is literally death itself. Every time Lucian and Senna work together now, there's this moment where their old synergy kicks in and everything feels almost normal. Almost. Lucian will position for a shot, and Senna will already be moving to cover his angle before he says anything. Senna will overextend slightly, and Lucian's already shifting to protect her flank through pure instinct. The muscle memory is still there, that mechanical synchronization they built over years of fighting side by side. For brief moments during combat, they can pretend things are like they used to be. But then the fight ends and reality comes back. Senna will do something with the mist, manipulate shadows in a way that shouldn't be possible, drain life force from their enemies, see and communicate with souls of the dead, and Lucian will be reminded that she's different now, that the woman he loved is still in there, but she's also something else, something new that he doesn't fully understand. And Senna will see the way Lucian looks at her sometimes, see the concern and fear he tries to hide, and she'll be reminded that she came back wrong, that she's not fully alive anymore, that her very existence disturbs the natural order. They're trying to figure out how to be in a relationship when neither of them is who they used to be. Lucian has nightmares about the moment he lost her, wakes up reaching for weapons, convinced Thresh is back for her again. Sometimes he wakes her up because he needs to physically confirm she's real, she's there, she's not trapped in the lantern anymore. Senna has nightmares about the lantern, about the other souls, about the torment that felt like it lasted centuries. Sometimes she wakes up and doesn't know where she is, thinks she's still trapped, starts panicking until Lucian grounds her. They're both traumatized in ways that complement each other's trauma, which is somehow both helpful and deeply unhealthy. They understand each other's pain in a way no one else could, but they also trigger each other sometimes. Lucian being overprotective reminds Senna of being helpless in the lantern. Senna using mist powers reminds Lucian of Thresh and what he did to her. And there's the question neither of them wants to fully address. What is Senna now? She's not fully alive in the traditional sense. The mist sustains her as much as anything else. She exists in this liminal state between life and death, wielding powers that corrupt most people who touch them. How long can she maintain her humanity while channeling the very force that corrupted the Shadow Isles? Is she slowly becoming something else? Will there come a day when the mist consumes her completely and Lucian loses her again, but this time to the darkness inside her rather than to Thresh? These are questions they don't have answers to, questions that terrify both of them, questions they avoid discussing because acknowledging them makes them too real. Instead, they focus on the work, on hunting undead, on preventing other people from suffering what they suffered. They've taken on the responsibility of dealing with the growing threat from the Shadow Isles, understanding that threat better than anyone else alive. They're good at it, maybe too good. Sometimes Lucian wonders if they're using the mission as a distraction, avoiding the hard conversations about their relationship and their future by constantly fighting. But despite all the complications and trauma and uncertainty, they're still choosing each other. That's what matters. Every day, Senna could walk away, could decide that being around Lucian and being reminded of her old life is too painful, could choose to embrace the mist fully and leave her humanity behind. She doesn't. Every day, Lucian could walk away, could decide that this version of Senna is too different, too changed, too dangerous, could choose to remember her as she was rather than accept who she is now. He doesn't. They're staying, fighting together, building a new relationship on the ruins of their old one. It's not the happy ending they imagined before Thresh. It's not the peaceful retirement they used to dream about. But it's real. It's theirs. And after years of being apart, after literally fighting through death to get back to each other, just being together in whatever form that takes feels like enough. They've learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's about choosing each other even when things are hard, even when you're both damaged, even when the future is uncertain and scary. They survived the worst thing that could happen to a couple and came out the other side still wanting to be together. That has to count for something. Sometimes, during quiet moments between missions, they talk about the future in more realistic terms now. Not fantasies about peaceful retirement, but actual plans for how to manage Senna's condition, how to fight the Shadow Isles more effectively, how to help other Sentinels who are dealing with supernatural threats. They're building a new life together that acknowledges what they've been through rather than trying to return to who they were before. Lucian's learning about the mist, learning how it works, so he can better understand what Senna's dealing with and support her when she struggles with it. Senna's helping Lucian work through his trauma and guilt, helping him understand that what happened to her wasn't his fault, that there was nothing more he could have done. They're healing, slowly, together. It's messy and non-linear, and some days are worse than others, but they're making progress. They've started letting other Sentinels help them on missions, building a team again instead of Lucian working solo like he did during the years she was gone. They're reconnecting with the organization they used to be part of, sharing what they've learned about Thresh and the Shadow Isles. And sometimes, rarely, they get moments that feel almost normal. Sitting together watching a sunset after a successful mission. Sharing a meal in some small town they just saved from undead, laughing about something stupid like they used to. These moments are precious because they're reminders that beneath all the trauma and supernatural complications, they're still Lucian and Senna. Still the same people who fell in love fighting side by side. Still partners in every sense of the word. The core of their relationship survived everything that tried to destroy it. That's not nothing. That's actually kind of miraculous when you think about it. Most relationships don't survive far less than what they went through. They survived literal death and separation and years of torment and fundamental changes to who they are as people, and they're still choosing each other. If that's not true love, what is? All right, League Addicts. Let's talk about the most griefing, most forbidden, most absolutely should not work but somehow does relationship in all of Runeterra. Garen and Katarina, a Dalmatian soldier, a Noxian assassin, enemies by birth, by training, by everything their societies stand for, forbidden by literally everything their nations believe in, raised from childhood to hate each other, to see each other as the enemy, to kill each other on sight. And yet somehow, despite all logic and reason, these two idiots caught feelings for each other harder than a bronze player catching a max-range blitzcrank hook to the face. This is Romeo and Juliet, except both of them are fed out of their minds, heavily armed with weapons that can level buildings and could probably 1v5 their respective families if it came down to actual combat. It's the kind of relationship that makes you wonder if they're literally running it down mid together, or if this is somehow the greatest outplay in Runeterra's entire political history. There's no logical reason this should work. Literally none. Demacia and Noxus have been at war, either actively or through Cold War tensions, for generations. Their ideologies are complete opposites on every fundamental level. Their people hate each other with a passion that goes beyond normal rivalry. This is cultural, historical, blood-deep hatred that's been passed down through centuries and reinforced through constant conflict. And into this absolute mess of political tension and historical animosity walk Garen, Damatia's golden boy and most loyal soldier, and Katerina, Noxus's most deadly assassin and daughter of their most feared general. Two people who should be trying to kill each other on sight. Two people who definitely have tried to kill each other multiple times. Two people who, against all logic and reason and common sense and basic survival instincts, somehow looked at each other across the battlefield and thought maybe, just maybe, murder isn't the only option here. So here's the context that makes this relationship absolutely unhinged and why everyone who knows about it thinks they've both completely lost their minds. Demacia and Noxus hate each other on a fundamental ideological level. We're not talking about casual server rivalry where people from NA flame, people from EUW for fun. We're talking about centuries of war, bloodshed, territorial disputes, war crimes on both sides, and fundamental ideological differences that make peace seem impossible. Demacia believes in honor above all else, in justice and protecting the weak, in following strict codes of conduct, in noble ideals and chivalry, and definitely not fraternizing with enemy assassins who've probably killed dozens of Demacian soldiers. Their whole society is built on these noble principles, on being paragons of virtue, on defending what's right through honorable means. They have knights and codes of conduct and rules about warfare. They value integrity, honesty, nobility. Noxus believes in strength above all, in conquest and expansion, in seizing power and holding it through force and cunning, in meritocracy through combat, and definitely not catching feelings for the enemy's poster boy who represents everything they're fighting against. Their whole empire is built on the idea that might makes right, on proving your worth through strength and ambition, on taking what you can hold and crushing anyone who stands against you. They value power, ambition, effectiveness over morality. These aren't just different political systems or cultural preferences. These are fundamentally incompatible worldviews that have been in direct conflict for centuries. And Garen? He's Demacia's golden child, the most loyal, honorable, duty-bound soldier they've produced in generations. He's the guy who genuinely believes in everything Demacia stands for with his whole heart. He leads the Dauntless Vanguard, an elite military unit trusted with the kingdom's most important missions. He's trusted by the crown, respected by every soldier, seen as a role model by civilians. He's probably never broken a rule in his entire life before this. Never questioned orders, never strayed from the path of honor and duty. Katerina's the opposite in every way. Noxus's most deadly operative, daughter of General Dukuto, trained literally from childhood to kill efficiently and without hesitation. She's ruthless, efficient, raised to see mercy as weakness and duty as everything. She's assassinated political targets, ended lives without question, served her nation through the shadows. On paper, these two should be trying to execute each other. In practice, they keep having these intense charged encounters that are definitely not regulation and definitely not what either of their nations would approve of. Now here's where it gets spicy and also deeply complicated in ways that could literally start a political crisis if anyone found out. Somewhere between all the battles and political tension and trying to kill each other during their initial encounters, Garen and Katerina start actually talking instead of just fighting. Maybe it starts during a mission where they're forced to briefly cooperate against a mutual threat that endangers both their nations. Maybe it's curiosity, wanting to understand the enemy beyond propaganda. Maybe it's just respect for someone who's clearly a worthy opponent, someone who fights with skill and dedication. But slowly, these hostile encounters become something more than just combat. They start talking, actually communicating, meeting in secret on neutral ground where neither nation's spies can reach, where they're just two people instead of representatives of warring nations. They're having actual conversations about philosophy, about their lives, about what drives them, and what they discover is complicated and challenges everything they thought they knew. Garen realizes that Katerina isn't just a heartless killer without morals. She's someone following her nation's values the same way he follows his. She's loyal to Noxus the way he's loyal to Demacia, dedicated to her duty the way he's dedicated to his, bound by expectations and family legacy just like him. She genuinely believes in Noxus's ideals of meritocracy and strength. She's not evil. She's just on the other side. Katerina realizes that Garen isn't just some naive, honorable fool blindly following orders. He genuinely believes in protecting people, in making the world better, in standing for something beyond personal power. He has principles he actually follows. There's integrity in him that's rare even in Demacia. He's not trying to conquer or dominate, he's trying to protect and serve. There's a mutual respect that develops slowly, carefully against both their better judgments. An understanding that they're both soldiers caught in a war neither of them started, fighting for nations whose leaders make the decisions while people like them carry out the orders. And somewhere in those secret conversations, somewhere between the careful distance and the guarded words, respect turns into something neither of them can fully control or understand or stop. They're falling for each other, and it's literally the worst possible thing that could happen to both of their careers, reputations, and probably lives. Every time they meet in secret, they're risking everything. If Demacia found out their greatest soldier, the leader of the dauntless vanguard, is meeting secretly with a Noxian assassin, that's treason, execution, disgrace to his family. If Noxus found out their deadliest operative has compromised herself by developing feelings for the enemy, for Demacia's champion, that's weakness, disgrace, loss of position, possibly death. Her father would probably disown her if he found out, but they keep meeting anyway, drawn to each other like moths to a flame that's definitely going to burn them both eventually. And here's the tragedy that makes their relationship so painful and beautiful and frustrating all at once. Garen and Katerina can't actually be together. Not really. Not in any public, official, permanent way that normal couples take for granted. They can never hold hands in public, never acknowledge each other as partners, never build a life together. They can have their secret meetings in shadowed places where no one knows their names, hidden locations they've carefully scouted. They can have stolen moments that feel like they exist outside time, whispered conversations where they can be honest about their feelings, touches that linger too long to be just tactical assessment. They can look at each other across battlefields with recognition in their eyes, with an understanding that no one else can see. But at the end of every night, at the conclusion of every meeting, Garen has to return to Demacia and put on his armor and be their champion again. Katerina has to return to Noxus and sharpen her blades and be their weapon again. They have to go back to their duties, their families, their nations that demand complete loyalty and would see their relationship as the ultimate betrayal. They have to pretend these meetings never happened, have to act like they're still enemies if they encounter each other officially. They're on opposite sides of a war that won't end in their lifetime, possibly not for generations, because the conflict is too deeply rooted in cultural identity. Their countries are too invested in the conflict, too committed to their opposing ideologies, too built on the idea of the other as the enemy. There's no happy ending here, no running away together to some neutral nation, no choosing love over duty. They're both too honorable, too bound by loyalty and responsibility to abandon their people, to betray everything they've been raised to value. So they exist in this painful limbo, loving each other from opposite sides of a conflict neither of them can escape or solve, knowing every meeting might be their last, knowing this relationship is impossible, but unable to stop themselves from continuing it anyway. It's like falling for someone who mains your permaban champion. The universe itself is telling you this won't work. The matchup is fundamentally incompatible. Every game you'd play together would be doomed. But your heart said, nah, I'm going to end this anyway, and hope somehow the meta shifts, or we figure out some creative solution that makes this work. They sneak moments together knowing each encounter could be discovered, could be the one that ruins both their lives. They fight their feelings while simultaneously giving in to them. They care for each other deeply while serving nations that want each other destroyed. It's beautiful in its tragedy, romantic in its impossibility, devastating in its honesty about how sometimes love isn't enough to overcome circumstances. And absolutely the most League of Legends thing that's ever happened. Two people perfectly matched, perfectly synchronized in combat, perfectly suited for each other in personality and values, kept apart by circumstances entirely beyond their control, by loyalty to opposing sides, by duty that demands they be enemies even when they'd rather be partners. So they continue their secret meetings, continue their impossible relationship, continue loving each other while knowing it can never be more than stolen moments in the dark, brief respites from a war that will outlive them both. A relationship that exists in the margins of their real lives, beautiful and tragic and absolutely doomed, but somehow still worth it to both of them. Their relationship exists in these impossible spaces, literal and metaphorical gaps between their official lives. They meet in forgotten ruins on the border between their nations, places that belong to neither Demacia nor Noxus, where the war feels distant, even though it's always there. They meet in neutral cities, where anonymity is possible, where they can walk side by side for a few hours, pretending to be normal people on a normal date. They've developed signals, ways to communicate across battlefields that look like standard military gestures to anyone watching, but mean everything to them. A specific way Garen holds his sword means, I'm thinking about you. A particular angle of Katarina's daggers means, I miss you. They've created an entire secret language out of necessity, out of the desperate need to maintain some connection, even when they're forced to be enemies in public. And the worst part? They're good at hiding it. Too good. They've become experts at compartmentalization, at switching between their public personas and their private selves. Garen can stand in Demacian war councils planning strategies against Noxus and never let his face betray that he's in love with one of their most valuable assets. Katarina can receive assassination orders that might put her in conflict with Garen and accept them without hesitation because duty comes first, always, even when it tears her apart inside. Sometimes they're forced to actually fight each other. Not the fake fights they can stage when they encounter each other on missions. Real combat where their nations are watching, where failure to engage would raise questions, where they have to genuinely try to complete their objectives, even if it means hurting each other. Those are the worst moments, when Garen's sword actually cuts Katarina, when he sees her blood and knows he caused it, when his duty demands he press the advantage but everything in him screams to stop. When Katarina's daggers actually find gaps in Garen's armor, when she has to watch him stagger from her poison, when her mission requires she eliminate him, but she can't bring herself to deliver a killing blow, and has to make it look like he escaped through skill rather than mercy. They both carry scars from each other now, physical reminders of the impossible position they're in. Katarina has a scar on her shoulder from Garen's sword. She could have dodged it completely, but didn't, because taking some injury made the fight look real. Garen has a scar across his ribs from her daggers. He could have blocked it, but chose to take the hit rather than counter in a way that would have seriously hurt her. They traced these scars during their secret meetings, apologies and reassurances whispered in the dark. I had to. I know. Did it hurt? Less than hurting you did. It's the kind of relationship that would make any therapist have a breakdown trying to unpack, and they can't talk to anyone about it, can't seek advice or support. Garen's closest friends, his fellow Dalmatian soldiers who fought beside him for years, would see his relationship with Katerina as ultimate betrayal. His sister Lux might understand, might try to help, but telling her would put her in an impossible position of choosing between family loyalty and duty to Dalmatia. His commitment to honor and duty is what defines him in everyone's eyes. If they knew he was meeting secretly with an enemy assassin, it would shatter their entire perception of who he is. Katerina's in the same position. Her fellow Noxian operatives would see her feelings for Garen as dangerous weakness. Her father, General Ducouteau, would probably try to kill Garen himself if he found out, or worse, use the relationship as leverage for some political play. In Noxus, emotional attachments are liabilities. Caring about someone from an enemy nation is the kind of weakness that gets you removed from your position, possibly permanently. So they both carry this secret alone. This massive part of their lives that they can share with no one except each other. It's isolating, exhausting. The mental gymnastics required to maintain their public personas while hiding their true feelings is wearing them both down. The really messed up part is they've both considered ending it. Multiple times. They've had conversations where one of them suggests they should stop meeting, that this is too dangerous, too painful, too impossible, that maybe it would be easier to just let go and focus entirely on duty. Those conversations always end the same way, with both of them admitting they can't do it, that even knowing this relationship is doomed, even knowing it can never be what they want it to be, even knowing every meeting risks everything, they'd rather have these stolen moments than nothing at all. It's not healthy. Any outside observer would tell them they're setting themselves up for tragedy, but they're both too deep in it now, too committed to each other despite the impossibility. They've accepted that this is what their love looks like, secret, forbidden, existing in the margins, always one discovery away from catastrophe. They've made peace with the fact that they'll probably never get a happy ending, that this relationship will likely end in tragedy when someone discovers them, or when the war forces them into a position where duty truly does override everything else. But until that day comes, they're going to keep meeting, keep loving each other despite the universe telling them not to, keep finding moments of genuine connection in a world that demands they be enemies. Sometimes Garen wonders what it would be like if they'd been born in different nations, if they could just be together without all the political complications. Sometimes Katerina imagines a world where Dalmatia and Noxus make peace, where their relationship could be acknowledged without both of them being executed as traitors. They both know these are fantasies, comfortable lies they tell themselves to make the present bearable. The war between their nations isn't ending anytime soon. Too much blood has been spilled, too many grudges formed, too much of each nation's identity is built on opposition to the other. Dalmatia needs Noxus as the aggressive conqueror to justify their defensive stance and military spending. Noxus needs Dalmatia as the self-righteous enemy to unite their empire against. Their leaders on both sides benefit from the conflict continuing. Peace would require fundamental changes to how both nations see themselves, and that's not happening in Garen and Katerina's lifetime. So they exist in this impossible space, loving each other while serving opposing sides, meeting in secret while fighting in public, holding on to something beautiful while knowing it's ultimately doomed. It's the most tragic kind of love story, Not the kind where circumstances tear them apart, but the kind where circumstances keep them together in the worst possible way, where they're close enough to touch, but never close enough to actually build a life together. So tonight, as you close your eyes in your warm bed with your phone charging on the nightstand, and your mental may be slightly less broken than it was after your last ranked session, just remember, at least you're not navigating love in Runeterra. At least your relationship problems don't involve literal soul-stealing demons, or centuries-old political conflicts, or being infused with corrupted mist energy. At least when you have a disagreement with your partner, you're not leading armies on opposite sides of a war. At least you don't have to choose between the person you love and literally everything else in your life. Your relationship might have its challenges, communication issues, different life goals. Maybe one of you plays League way too much. But you're probably not planning revolutionary warfare together or meeting in secret because acknowledging your relationship publicly would result in execution. Zaya and Rakan are out there fighting for their people's survival while maintaining a relationship in the middle of warfare. They're dealing with constant trauma, impossible choices, and the knowledge that they'll probably die young in this conflict, and they're still finding moments to love each other fiercely. They turned their love into a weapon, into something that makes them stronger, into proof that beauty and joy can exist even in the darkest circumstances. Ash and Tryndamere took an arranged marriage that should have been a disaster and turned it into genuine partnership through effort and mutual respect. They learned to love each other by actually trying, by listening, by valuing what the other person brought to the relationship. They're proof that sometimes the relationship you don't choose works out better than the one you would have chosen. That compatibility isn't always obvious at first, that love can grow slowly and steadily into something unshakable. Lucian and Senna literally fought through death itself to be together again. They survived years of separation, unimaginable trauma, fundamental changes to who they are as people, and they're still choosing each other. They're building a new relationship on the ruins of their old one, accepting that they can't go back to who they were, but they can move forward as who they are now. They're proof that love isn't just about the good times. It's about staying when things are impossibly hard, when your partner is different from who you remember, when the future is uncertain and terrifying. It's about choosing each other, even when choosing each other means accepting complications and challenges that would break most relationships. And Garen and Katarina are loving each other despite the entire universe telling them not to. They're stealing moments between wars, building a relationship in the margins of their real lives, knowing it's doomed but doing it anyway because the alternative, not loving each other, feels worse than the inevitable tragedy. They're proof that sometimes love doesn't conquer all. Sometimes circumstances really are insurmountable, but that doesn't make the love less real or less valuable. Sometimes the relationship that can never be public or permanent or acknowledged is still worth having. Sometimes loving someone despite impossible odds is its own kind of victory. These couples have survived things that would destroy normal relationships. They've been tested by warfare, death, political conflict, trauma, fundamental incompatibility, and they've come out the other side still together, still fighting for each other, still finding reasons to love each other, even when everything else is falling apart. And yeah, their relationships aren't perfect. They're complicated and messy and sometimes probably unhealthy by normal standards. But they're real. They're built on genuine connection and mutual respect, and the choice to keep choosing each other, even when it would be easier to walk away. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, maybe take a moment to appreciate that your relationship challenges probably don't require you to fight through the shadow aisles, or plan revolution or commit treason. Maybe text your partner that you love them, or if you're single, appreciate that at least you're not falling for someone from an enemy nation who you're supposed to kill on sight. League lore may be full of tragedy and impossible situations and love stories that make you want to cry into your pillow. But hey, at least you just have to deal with it in the game. You can close the client. You can take a break. These characters are living this reality every single day with no escape, no pause button, no option to surrender at 15. And maybe there's something beautiful in that, in the fact that despite everything, despite war and death and impossible circumstances, people still find love, still choose to connect with each other, still build relationships that matter even when the odds are stacked against them. It's kind of inspiring when you think about it. If Zaya and Raken can maintain their relationship while fighting a revolution, you can probably handle your partner leaving dishes in the sink. If Ash and Tryndamere can learn to love each other despite fundamental cultural differences and completely opposite approaches to everything, you can probably work through that disagreement about where to go for dinner. If Lucian and Senna can rebuild their relationship after literal years of one of them being trapped in a soul-collecting lantern, you can probably get through that rough patch you're currently experiencing. Love in Runeterra is hard mode. It's playing ranked with packet loss and trolls on your team and the enemy jungler camping your lane. But people still do it, still risk everything for it, still find it worth the pain and complication and impossible challenges. Because at the end of the day, having someone who genuinely cares about you, who fights beside you, who chooses you despite everything, that's worth more than any amount of safety or simplicity. That's the kind of thing that makes life worth living even when life is brutally hard. So sleep well tonight, gamers. Rest easy knowing that your relationship situation, whatever it is probably more manageable than anything happening in League lore. Tomorrow's another day to maybe climb some LP, maybe text someone you care about, maybe appreciate the relationships you have that don't require you to fight undead horrors or commit acts of revolution or hide your love from literally everyone you know. And if you are dealing with complicated relationship stuff, remember that you're probably handling it better than you think. Love is hard. Relationships take work. But they're worth it when you find the right person or people who make the struggle meaningful. Dream about bot lane synergy that's actually good for once. Dream about partners who have your back unconditionally. Dream about love that survives impossible circumstances. Dream about finding someone who looks at you the way Raken looks at Zaya, or someone who'd fight through literal death for you like Lucian fought for Senna, or someone who learns to love you slowly and steadily like Ash and Tryndamere, or someone worth risking everything for like Garen and Katarina risk for each other. And remember, no matter how bad your ranked games get, no matter how hard your relationships are, no matter how challenging life becomes, at least you're not living in the Shadow Isles. At least you didn't watch your entire tribe get slaughtered. At least you're not trapped in Thresh's lantern. At least you're not planning revolution while falling in love. At least your love life doesn't require you to commit treason. Things could always be worse. You could be a League of Legends champion, and trust me, their lives are way more complicated than yours. GG. Sleep tight and don't let the fiddlesticks bite. May your dreams be full of perfect synergy and your ranked games tomorrow be mercifully free of griefers. And maybe, just maybe, may you find or appreciate the kind of love that makes even Runeterra's chaos feel worth it. Because at the end of the day, that's what all these stories are really about. Finding connection and meaning in a world that's trying its hardest to tear everything apart. And if these fictional characters can do it in their nightmare world, maybe there's hope for all of us in ours. Sweet dreams. League addicts. You've earned the rest. Tomorrow you can int your promos again, but tonight, just sleep. Let the lore wash over you. Let the stories of impossible love remind you that human connection, or Vastian connection, or whatever, is worth fighting for even when everything else is falling apart. And when you wake up, maybe you'll queue up for ranked with a slightly better mental, knowing that whatever happens in your games, at least nobody's stealing your soul and trapping it in a lantern. That's something to be grateful for. Now rest. Let sleep take you. Let your mind drift through the Freljord's frozen wastes, through Ionia's war-torn forests, through the Shadow Isle's cursed mists, and know that somewhere in all that darkness and difficulty, love still finds a way, still persists, still matters. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Not that love conquers all, because it clearly doesn't, but that love is worth pursuing, even when it doesn't conquer all. Worth fighting for even when the odds are impossible. Worth holding on to even when everything else is falling apart. Good night, gamers. Sleep well. The Rift will still be there tomorrow, full of all its usual chaos and frustration and occasional moments of beauty. But for now, rest. You've earned it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll wake up with a slightly better understanding of why we keep playing this game, keep engaging with these stories, keep searching for connection despite how hard it can be. Because deep down, we're all just looking for our own version of what these couples found. Someone who makes the struggle worthwhile, someone worth fighting for, someone who chooses us even when choosing us is complicated. Sweet dreams, and remember, love is hard. Relationships are complicated, but at least you're not doing it in Runeterra. That's the real victory here. GG. Sleep tight. We'll see you in the next one.